Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Content Crowd. The Content Crowd is a podcast where we like to explore what makes content resonate, from creative habits to point of view shifts to behind the scenes breakdowns, so that listeners, and also me, can stop mimicking and start making something that actually matters. I'd like to start off by mentioning that this show is sponsored by Scrappy ABM. Scrappy ABM helps you build repeatable account-based marketing plays and teaches you how to do them so that you can bring ABM in-house when you're ready. Now, let's get into the show. I'm your host, Trevor, and today we're going to be diving into something that's been an absolute game changer for me and my content creation life. And it can fix that whole I've got nothing to post panic that you keep meeting every single week. We're talking about the NoteCard Method. It's a simple system that will give you endless content ideas, make your process smoother, and help you stop treating content like a last-minute chore. And no, this isn't some fluffy mindset. This is a wildly tactical pen-to-paper strategy straight from my own workflow. So, let me hit you with a fact. Creativity doesn't die because you're not talented. It dies because you sit down to create something and realize you have absolutely nothing to say. Yet, it's not that you don't have anything to say, you haven't written it down, and so you believe that you don't have anything. But, have you ever had that moment? Have you ever felt like that? You've blocked out time, you're pumped to go batch content. You sit down, you open a blank document or a page or your camera app, and you're going to start recording, and you're just like, suddenly you're stuck. You end up doing something else. You're deep diving on a Wikipedia page about the history of soup spoons. That's creator's block. And that's brutal. But today it ends because I'm about to walk you through the simplest, most high leverage system I've ever used for content ideation and consistency. It's called the NoteCard Method, and it's the reason I never stare at a blank page anymore. Now, the NoteCard Method is not just for content creation. People use it for studying, so you may already be familiar with this if you use this in high school or college. People use it for budgeting. There's a lot of ways you can use it, but I use it for content creation. And it doesn't have to always live on paper. I do like to start most things on paper, but you could do this in a Trello board or a Notion or an app of some kind. But I just like the paper method because that's how I work. I typically have one notebook that is made for random ideas, and then that notebook either gets translated into note cards or gets translated into my planner that help me actually batch out content. So I'm a big pen to paper person. So let's start off. The real reason that creators quit. Most creators don't struggle with content creation. They struggle with idea generation. We think if I could just get ideas, I'd be unstoppable. But here's where we trip. We expect inspiration to kind of just show up on demand, and it doesn't. Inspiration is like Wi-Fi. It's unreliable when you need it most. Am I right? But I used to sit down, ready to batch content, and either get lost or go into research mode, or I tell myself I need to think more, or I need to learn more. I needed to try to know everything there was about the topic that I was going to talk about. And it's a bit of procrastination and a bit of perfectionism. And I know a lot of people think of perfectionism meaning that you can't finish a project because it's not perfect, but it also keeps you from stopping, because what happens is you think to yourself that you have to know every single thing about this topic. You have to become an expert on something that you've never actually done. And so now you're the expert on whatever this topic is, but you've never actually done it. So you know everything there is to know about it, but you've never actually put forth the effort to actually do it. So procrastination, perfectionism, whatever, that's what that is when you are trying to create something and you have to stop and try to tell yourself that you need to learn more about it. So what happens then? Maybe you post once a week. Maybe you post none at all this week. Maybe you wait till next week. Maybe you keep telling yourself that you'll wake up and you'll batch a bunch of content for this week, because that's what I do. I'm like, Monday morning I'll wake up and I'll write a bunch of stuff for LinkedIn, and then I end up just writing stuff on the fly, or pulling stuff from my notes because I haven't transferred them to my note cards or something else. I still mess up, but this really does help me stay on track when I do it. But here's the truth about all that. The content problem isn't motivation. It's a system failure, which is where the NoteCard Method comes in. So, how the NoteCard Method found me. So a few years ago, I picked up this book called Do-Over by John Acuff. There used to be a dust cover on it, but I think my daughter has went and played with it and gotten rid of it. But anyway, in one part of the book, he talks about creating a personal job network using note cards, categorizing people, resources, ideas on note cards, little 3x5 cards or whatever. And it clicked for me. This guy is mapping a whole career strategies on paper. Look at that. He's actually got... And for him, he had 4 categories that he mapped everybody in. So you would take a note card and you would write down someone's name, which I've done here, and I put numbers at the top so that I know what they can do. So it's either who do I know that is wise about career issues? Who have I worked with? Who do I know that is influential? Who do I know that owns a business? Who do I follow online that is in my desired career space? And what casual relationship am I forgetting that might have a career impact? So the big thing about this is that relationships help you get the first freelance gig, or they help you get a new job. And you don't know who you know unless you spend deliberate time focusing on those relationships. Kind of like he has a quote here, dentists say, only floss the teeth you want to keep. And the same is true of career relationships. Only invest in the ones you want to keep. So I thought that idea was incredible because it took something very simple and it made you sit down and think of everybody that you knew. And as I started doing this, I was like, I knew like 50 people who fit into one of those 6 categories. As I mentioned, that simplicity stuck. So fast forward to this year, a few days ago, and I'm talking with my friend Chris Brown on his show, Chris Talks Cash Flow, and we're talking budgets, and he talks about the NoteCard method. And it made me realize that a lot of people are using note cards in a lot of different ways that I didn't think of, because I never used note cards to study in high school. But when I read about the NoteCard method in this book, I started using it for content creation. And when I was kind of researching how to use note cards for content creation, that's when I realized people used to use it for studying. And I didn't study in high school, so I never used that. But if you can map relationships and money this way and study, why can you not map content? So I immediately went and grabbed a stack of note cards. I probably got these from like the dollar store. I bought these today from the grocery store while I was there because for a demonstration, I'm going to open them and start over. But anyway, I grabbed these, sat down, sat at my desk and started writing. One idea per card, no editing, just like whatever the idea was, I just put it on a note card and just flipped it over. And as I mentioned earlier, I do have a sort of like ideation notebook that I use as well. So I sort of have this notebook here that has ideas for videos, ideas for podcast episodes, ideas for blogs and other content. This can be the Notes app in your phone, or it can be a physical thing that you like to write, because again, I like to actually physically write things. But I have all those ideas out there, and the ones that seem the most probable to move forward with right now, or the ones that are really interesting, I put them on a note card. So here's the exact workflow, and this is where we kind of get tactical with it. So get your notebook and start taking notes, or just, save this podcast for later. Pick one day a week. It doesn't have to be Sunday. It doesn't have to be Monday. It can be any day of the week, and it doesn't have to be at night. It can be in the morning. Just put it on your calendar where you sit down for maybe 15 minutes with a stack of blank note cards, and you just kind of brain dump everything. If you follow my content creation sprint that I gave you 2 weeks ago, you should have already started making notes in like a notebook of things that went well this week, things you wish you could have done better, things you struggled with, and came up with a lot of those ideas. Remember, I said that just in a week, you can come up with 20 ideas. So if you've gone through and done those 3 things, you should have 20 ideas that you can start putting on a card, and put one on each card. So everything you thought about that week, everything that you've struggled with, everything that you've been asked, everything that you've read, random lines from podcasts, a moment of frustration that you think you want to talk through, each one of those gets its own card. And again, I mentioned that I put sort of the rough ideas in my notebook first and transfer them in the card, but you don't have to do that. You can write every one on note cards. Note cards are cheap. I mean, this pack is 100 cards and it was like $2, so you can waste a few cards. But for example, why perfectionism is a scam. There's one thing I can put on this card. I have it right here because we were talking about perfectionism earlier. Or another idea, what's something that is sort of like counterintuitive, like I hate that people think that you have to create content daily or that you have to post daily. Maybe that's something that you want to combat. That's something I'm out to combat. Or 3 weird ways I got podcast guests. How my first YouTube video only got 11 views and I still didn't quit. These are all the things that I put out, but it's one thought per card. Think of each card as like a Lego block. It's just a messy, beautiful, raw view of all the content you could possibly think of creating. So no order, no categories, anything like that. You're just dumping. Now that you've got all that, let's start doing categories and coding. Once you've got the stack, and again, if you went through your content creation sprint, you should have at least 20 ideas. Maybe you added a few more. You've got lines from podcasts and cool things that you've read in a book, or maybe you've decided you didn't need all those things and some things weren't plausible. So maybe 15 to 25 cards. I feel like that should be pretty easy. So start categorizing. You don't have to have any fancy system. If you want to highlight, like I do, you can do that. Or you can make numbers on each one and just keep the top card as like a legend, that works too. But just find whatever way helps you easily categorize these. Don't think about it too hard. Again, make one card that can be a legend and highlight those, put a number somewhere so that you know, but just right at the top what it is, okay? Is it a story? Is it a question? Is it a lesson? Is it a hook? Is it a hot take? Is it a tactical breakdown? There's 5 categories right there for you. I already mentioned color coding helps. Just make sure that you make a legend on the top card so that you know that blue is for stories and red is for tactical tips and yellow is for hooks, etc. Okay, but we're categorizing that because we need to remember that we need more than one type of content. Next step, we're going to deck sort. This is where we'll take it to the next level. So after you've done that, this can be in the same day, or you can do one day of ideation, one day of like sorting or whatever. But once a week, what we're going to do is sit down and reshuffle the cards, based on what I'm creating. If it's a podcast script day, I'll grab 2 or 3 cards from like the story category. Maybe there's a tactical one that I really like. Maybe there's a hot take. And maybe they all go together. Maybe they don't go together. Maybe I go off on a tangent. But it's kind of fun if you shuffle them and you kind of just go from there, because it forces yourself to sort of find a narrative arc. But obviously, we're not always wanting to just do things random like that. So what we should strive to do is look at all of our cards and start to put things together. We have maybe a hook we wrote, and it's related to a podcast line that we heard, and it helped us create a tactical breakdown, or we heard the tactical breakdown on the podcast and we're repurposing it, or we're telling our audience about it. And then maybe there's like a hot take in there too that like goes like, you find that a lot of these things sort of go together and you create this beautiful narrative arc of all these things you want to talk about. For example, for this episode, I sort of broke it down, but I never thought about making a episode about the NoteCard method until we were talking about budgeting. Me and my friend Chris were talking about budgeting and personal finance, and he talked about the NoteCard method. And I was like, okay, I'd kind of use the NoteCard method to create content. That's what I do. I could talk about that. And then as I started thinking about it, I had to think, well, where did that come from? Where did that idea of the note cards come from? I didn't invent it. It's something that already exists, but it comes from studying notes. And the biggest thing was, again, from this book, The Do-Over by John Acuff, right? So this book talks about the note card method. That's what really got me started on actually writing down things and sort of having a method of transferring ideas from my brain to paper and then actually creating them. So there's all those things that sort of, I'm giving you the tactical breakdown. I'm giving you a story that I learned. I'm giving you a lesson in how to sort of get over writer's block. There's a lot of things here that could have just came from a stack of note cards, each labeled with those different things. So don't get locked into, I have to use one card per idea. You can definitely do that. You can create a lot of short form videos from doing that, or you can put a lot together and make a beautiful narrative arc that turns into a long form video that turns into a podcast episode, whatever. So you've got a narrative arc. If you're creating short form content, you can grab 5 cards from the hooks and the lessons pile. You have a hook that goes along with that and you tell a lesson, and there you go. You've created a video. Do one of those for each of those. And maybe when you start saying the hook out loud, you realize there's 5 other ways that I could actually go from this, and write that down and start recording it. Take note of what you've recorded and find ways to tell the story differently each time. And yeah, it becomes almost no guesswork. You've spent your time writing down ideas in a way that is not like forcing yourself to sit down and write out ideas. Like, that's the worst part, is like sitting down and like forcing yourself to write. Like, obviously that's part of discipline and part of that, but sometimes it's just very nice to come in and just have ideas kind of flowing throughout. And then when you are actually sitting down in a session to create, you've got a stack of ideas that just make the creation go a lot better and a lot smoother. So I've kind of already briefly just touched about this in my tangent, but we can talk about recycling and merging. You can take a card that kicked off a really good hook and that either like made your mind explode with all kinds of different ideas, or it just led in a lot of different ways, and you can continue to expand that. That card then becomes the basis for a longer video on its own, and you start realizing that 1 or 2 ideas, 1 or 2 mediocre cards can actually turn into huge hits, because once you've got everything out on paper, now it's up to you to be creative and just take whatever those words are and go with it. So like, think about it this way. If I just came up to you and handed you a stack of 20 cards and like, here's your content ideas for the week, that would be awesome, wouldn't it? Like, wouldn't you love me to just give you 20 cards every week? And it's like, here's your content ideas. Go and do as many things as you possibly can. First of all, you would just be stoked because you've got 20 pieces of content right there. So ready to go, whether that is writing Facebook posts or writing LinkedIn posts or writing, threads on threads or threads on X or Blue Sky or whatever, or turning it into short form videos or long form videos. Like, that would be awesome. And that's basically what I'm doing right here. I'm telling you how it's super simple for you to like hand yourself 20 ideas every single week. And that's sort of the psychology of the NoteCard method. Like, it hits so hard because when everything is digital, our brains get lazy. A blinking cursor is stressful. A blank Notion doc feels like pressure because it's forever long. But the NoteCard sort of removes that. It's this physical piece of paper. It's finite. It's small. You can touch it. You can shuffle it. And there's only so much you could write on here. Could you fill up a note card with just like a few ideas to talk about pretty quickly? Yeah, you could. It probably wouldn't actually take that. You could probably look in your notes and fill out the whole deck pretty quickly, right? And so it's kind of like creatively unblocking your plumbing. When you're in a low idea season, like, you don't panic. You flip through the deck. You've got 30 ideas you haven't used yet, or you've got one idea that's doing really well, and you just keep expanding on it, and you keep momentum. And in creativity, momentum is everything. Momentum is what keeps you from giving up. So I want you guys to try this today. This is the challenge that I'm giving you guys this week. So it hasn't even been 30 days since I gave you guys the creative sprint, but now we can start adding this into our creative sprint. So go right now, if you don't already have one, go to the store. I like the bigger ones. What are these? I like the 4x6 ones just because I write kind of sloppy and write a lot of ideas. Go to the store, grab a pack of these, a few dollars. I also would recommend grabbing like a Sharpie pen like this, and then a regular pen if you don't already have these things, and then a set of highlighters. I recommend highlighters because I like those. But take the pack, open it up, write legend on the very first one, and start writing out what your legend is going to be. Is it going to be, hooks, hot takes? Mine is story, question, lesson, hook, hot take, and tactical breakdown. Write that on there, and you can either highlight each one or you can designate it with a number, and then just start thinking of where all your ideas are at. Are they in your notes app? Are they in a notebook somewhere? Are they doodled somewhere? Go find all those things and start writing them on each individual note card. If you did the creative sprint, you should already have like 20 or 40 ideas wherever that lives in your Notion doc, and start writing that down. And you'll be like pumped. You'll be so surprised at how many ideas you have and how easy it was for you to have came up with 40 ideas, 50 ideas, 100 ideas, like out of nowhere. So go out the note cards, sit down, set a 10-minute timer, and here's some things I can help you out with. Think about 5 questions your audience always asks you. Think about 5 mistakes you made earlier in your content journey or in your career, whatever your journey was. 5 stories from your work or creative life. 5 things that annoy you about your industry. 5 skills or tools you wish somebody told you about sooner. And boom, you've got 25 cards. That's 25 pieces of content. That's 25 posts. That's 25 videos. That's 25 blogs, whatever. Like, that is a ton of content right away. If you write a weekly blog, that's almost half a year of content. If you post a video once a month, that is 2 years worth of content right there. And guess what? Like, you're just getting started. Like, if you're done letting blank screens steal your calling, the NoteCard method is your way out. It's low tech, high impact, cheap, and about as scrappy as it gets. Take a picture of your note cards, tag me, DM me, like whatever you do. I want to know like that you guys are doing this and how it works. If you hear this, make a post on LinkedIn about it today. That could be your first note card idea. Make a post about this. Share this episode, tag me in it. I want to see what's in your deck. If today helped you think differently, share this episode with one friend who is struggling to stay consistent. This might be the creative nudge that they need. Thank you so much for listening. This has been The Content Crowd. I'm Trevor. Go build your deck. Send me some pictures, DM me, tag me in a post, go make something real, and I'll see you guys next time.